In today's podcast of Data for All, the Data Fours. Welcome to the Data for All podcast. I'm Charlie Yielden.
And I'm Charlie Pegian, where we want to empower you to think different with data.
And in today's podcast, we're introducing the Data 4 series.
Yes, and it is also our 1 year anniversary of the podcast. How cool is that, Charlie?
Woo!
Yeah.
If I had little poppers, I would pop them right now.
You know, I looked in the house today. I was going to get all fancy, and then I was like, I was just happy that I got the charger and the lights and all of that. So, there's a lot that goes into us doing this. We've got 3 cameras going. We obviously have incredible sound from our amazing engineer, Jeremy. And we've done this now consistently. So we are saying it's 1 year because we have consistently done this every 2 weeks. And this is number 26.
Mm-hmm. And how many weeks are in a year?
I think 51 and a quarter.
Interesting.
No, 52?
52.
And
if my maths are right, half of 52 is about 26.
Yes. And so because we are the Data for All podcast, we decided to do some math to start this off. Mm-hmm. So, Charlie, we haven't caught up with each other lately.
Yeah, we've been busybodies.
I know.
So we want to go through, like, obviously we're introducing the Data 4 series, so we're going to have some samples on that and things like that. But I do feel like it's catch up time.
Okay, so the number one question the entire United States is wanting to know, everybody is just ready to hear the answer to this. How is the toe spreader action going?
It's going well. It's slow for sure.
Okay, so if you don't know what we're talking about, toe spreaders. So toe spreaders, Charlie, please give us the 30-second recap of what is a toe spreader.
Yeah, so I've been wearing narrow shoes my entire life, and it's caused my toes, like since we've got video now, it's caused my toes to kind of sit underneath each other. Like that's basically like how my toes sit. And the toe spreaders, are the ones I have, are a little silicone. It's a silicone insert that just kind of goes between all of your toes and splays them out for you.
Yeah.
And my toes have gone from like this, where the little piggy that had none is hiding under his older brother, and then now it's moved out, and my big toe that was starting to point in is more straight on both feet. And for whatever reason, my left foot is worse than my right as far as like the amount of like bendiness or whatever in my toes. And so my right foot's actually looking like reasonably good these days, but my left still has some work to go.
All right. So why? We always ask these questions. Why? What's the goal? What is it helping you with?
For the toe spreaders?
Yeah.
It's key. It's more of a preventative measure. I think I mentioned this before when we were talking about it, but like in my 60s, I would most certainly have severe bunions, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah. So keep those feet that way when you're an old person. Not that there's any old people on this podcast. Don't even you're wanting to go there already. No, we're not.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So if I was thinking about like some of our last episodes, we did like data in home automation. And I had already moved into a home. You just did a huge renovation. Anything cool about that new home that, whether it's from the home automation side or the renovation is done, correct?
Yeah. So basically there's a whole section of our previous podcast on home automation that could just be nixed.
What?
And that's the hub.
Yeah, I know. It's true. We're at that point.
So I got some new, they're Google Pro Wi-Fis, and they support the newest Wi-Fi, and then also it has Threads on it as well. And so something that I learned since that podcast was that Threads is taking over for like just hubs in general.
Yep.
And so you can, it's Wi-Fi with home automation built into it, so to speak. And so I can connect all my lights and everything just to my router and not need all this extra equipment and stuff. And that's pretty cool. I'm still like waiting to pull the trigger because we added 30 some odd lights in our house, and I don't want to buy 30 some odd Hue lights at full price. And so I'm waiting on some sort of sale
Yeah.
or something like that before I buy them. And when I do, I'm not even gonna try to hook them into the hub. I'm just gonna go straight into the routers and see how that works. The problem with the bandwidth that traffic runs over is that we don't have like most of our devices don't use the newest Wi-Fi, but as they do, then that traffic could potentially compete.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a some adjustments that need to be made to it to make sure that it's future proof, but it's already going in a way cooler way.
Yeah, I've noticed in my house I've got my office, and then on the outside exterior of the home there's a camera that gets my driveway. That camera also does Wi-Fi because it's going back to a hub, and then it's going up into the cloud. That when that turns on and I'm on a Zoom, I get glitchy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it takes up that much traffic?
It does. I'm really surprised by that. And that's an AT&T router. I'm actually thinking about switching over to Google Fiber because it's right in front of my house now. And what I've done, though, of course, is I've just switched I think the camera I've got now going to my mesh network. So now it's on like 2 different channels. And so that's helped me out a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's been an issue. I was doing a presentation to only 100 people, and that's when I became glitchy. And it's like, the worst time. So another one that I was thinking of, another one of our podcasts that we did, the betting one.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a funny story about
Yeah,
betting?
you started to tell me this, but I'm curious to hear about it because, well, you just tell your story.
Yeah, okay. So went and visited my son last weekend, who's now a married man with a dog in Memphis.
Cool.
And Memphis has it's USL soccer team, and there's different levels. So this is like the second tier of the league. So this is, if you're thinking like the top league in the United States is MLS. This is like 3 rungs down below that.
So it's like AA baseball.
It's like AA baseball.
Yeah.
They play in a minor league baseball field.
Yeah.
And they have to cover up the dirt, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, we're sitting there, and the 3 people in front of us have multiple phones. They have the guy on my left in front of me had 2 phones. The guy directly in front of me had 6 phones. Then the guy on the right had 1 phone, and he was looking up to buy more prepaid phones. So we were creeping on these folks because it was what is going on?
Yeah, I mean, like, why would somebody have 6 phones in a stadium?
6 phones in a stadium. Then it became very obvious he was sports betting.
Okay.
On USL 2, basically.
Why do you need 6 phones to sports bet?
Obviously, he was doing something. So what he was doing, he was betting the latency. So the delay between when live action happens and the betting, whether it's MGM, I have no idea what he was betting with, whatever the betting service was, and when they capture it. So there's always going to be a latency, right? Yeah. Especially USL 2, basically.
Yeah.
And so I don't know all the bets that they were doing. I just saw one in the end that I was like, oh. And so they were doing stuff. They were, doing all this kind of thing. Then at the end, my wife says, I think they're betting if somebody scores a goal. So at that point, the score was 3-3. And so the over-under was 3.5.
Okay.
So if one team scored, that means they went out to 4. That means they would win if you bet the over. On both sides. So they're sitting there with the phones, just with fingers right on there, ready to go.
Pressed and ready to go. Because they're batting on latency, which is measured in milliseconds.
Yeah. All of a sudden, the other team, the visiting team, scored. They hit their phones, and the one guy in the middle goes, I just won 14 grand. And he stood up, and at that moment, all 3 guys got up and left. And you could see the other 2 guys, they were new to it, and they were kind of sweating a little bit.
The people who didn't have 6 phones, you mean?
The ones that only had 2. The one that had 2, he said, I won 1,500. He goes, why didn't you go all in? He goes, I was scared. And I'm like, you should be. And so, we were talking about, is that illegal? Is it, what? But, that online betting service can figure that out.
I mean.
Yes, they can.
If it's a pattern, they probably could, but a one-off, like you can just. Well, I imagine that they probably do have a way to detect
Sure.
bets that are so close to the actual event.
They are scrutinizing every bet that's within milliseconds of the actual event occurring. Because you got to remember, it's latency at that moment.
Yeah.
But after the fact, they have the exact time that the goal was
Yeah,
scored.
yeah.
You normally don't get paid out that kind of money, at least for 7 days while they're checking. I went and read one of the sports betting's things after that, just to, obviously for today, I know I wanted to tell this story.
Yeah. So then how do you like, why did he have 6 phones doing that and showing his 2 buddies doing that if it doesn't pay off consistently?
Well, obviously they think they're going to get away with it. Whether they will or whether they're just not smart enough to, I don't know. I got a feeling what they're doing is that 6 different accounts from 6 different prepaid phones, not their phones.
Mm-hmm.
They're VPNing into something, so a virtual private network, which means
showing
it thinks that one phone is in Dallas, the other phone is in Puerto Rico,
Sure.
And so it's going to be based on time when it goes to the online sports bet. And when you see 6 phones at the exact same time hit that, they're going to try to figure out if that was malicious or not.
Well, if you're playing, so running through a VPN doesn't necessarily make sense if you're playing the latency, unless you expect to make 6 bets and only get paid on 2 or 3.
That's a good point. And to be honest, I'm not going to test it to figure it out.
Yeah, because if you're running, say if you're in Memphis watching a game and then you run a VPN that says you're in Dallas, it's going to Dallas and then it's coming back. And so whatever race you're playing with latency, you just added an extra leg to the race.
Yep.
And so it still could work though, because there could be a direct line to, like the internet hubs, if you will.
Yeah.
Like when I was growing up, Atlanta was always the most consistent connection. And so communicating with Atlanta was easy, but then if I went somewhere else, it would have to go through multiple hubs and it would slow down. But I bet nowadays you could probably get away with it like half the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was really interesting. And obviously, since we just had a podcast on that.
Yeah. So our determination before was the house always wins under the rules that they set. And so these folks were not playing by the rules set. They were more like walking through a loophole.
Yep.
And if they get caught, and they don't get paid. But if they don't get caught,
they make money.
Then they do get paid. And then they win.
Yes.
Instead of the house.
But on average, I got a feeling the house is still winning. And they will catch folks. Now, I don't think I don't know how that works. I think what basically the enforcement is, they have signed an end user license agreement, right?
Yeah.
And in there, if you are betting latency of some sort, I got a feeling it's in that license agreement. Therefore, they can negate your winnings. That's what I'm assuming is going to be the big deal for something like that.
So you want to know something funny?
What's funny?
If you have a 5G connection, then you're always going to win the race. And so I don't know if the Redbird Stadium. So you guys were watching the game at the Redbird Stadium in Memphis.
We were there. We were live. Yes.
And so some carriers are outfitting stadiums and with 5G because it's very localized, meaning that the signal can't go far. So they'll put antennas all around the stadium, and all of the cell phone traffic is run through those 5G antennas. The ping or the latency on a 5G connection is between 3 and 10 milliseconds compared to the 50 to 80 milliseconds on a 4G connection.
Wow.
And unless the sports betting information is traveling over a 5G network, you're always going to win. And so I wonder if they planned for that and bought 5G burner phones. And then
one guy was checking the Wi-Fi in the stadium, and he was even he went up to one of the people and said, "So is there like a different Wi-Fi I can get on?" And he's like, "I don't know." And you know, it was just, asking an average person, I think it was the wait staff. And so they were in tune to the connections that they had. It's interesting, the online betting, sports betting is big business, big business. I actually heard the amount. It was some ungodly number from a sports betting perspective, just for Conference USA. So I know, that my former school, MTSU, is in Conference USA, and somebody mentioned, do you know how much money was spent on online or on betting in just Conference USA? And I'm like, well, what? Over $1 billion just on Conference USA. Forget about Big Ten, SEC. We're talking about the Middle Tennessee states of the world, the Old Dominions, those teams. Now, FAU, Florida Atlantic, made a run for the Final Four in basketball. So I think a lot of the money was from that.
Sure.
But it's still $1 billion.
Billion with a B.
Yes.
Yeah. I would not have guessed that.
So obviously, there's a lot of people that care about sports betting, and we tried to warn them. I got a feeling we're not warning these three guys that sat in front of me.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like it's an ongoing conversation because we haven't had online sports betting in a legal way for that long.
Correct.
And so we used to have to go somewhere or do it illegally or whatnot.
And you can bet on, was there a yellow card? I mean, you could bet on like 50 different things for a USL 2 game. That's what's so weird about it. Anyways, interesting stuff. Charlie, anything else? Oh, how you had No Fun May.
Oh, yeah.
And so No Fun May was Charlie decided to be grumpy and give up everything, including coffee.
Yeah. I do it every year.
Yeah.
And so I go it's basically no drugs, and I count caffeine and alcohol as drugs.
Okay.
And so I went all May this year, and I believe when we talked about it, I was drinking about 240 milligrams of caffeine in the morning. And then for a while I didn't do any coffee, and now I'm just between 1 cup and 2 cups a day.
Okay.
And so but I switched from drinking espresso to drinking this wheat coffee that I make at home now.
Yeah.
And so I'm only getting about 70 milligrams of caffeine per cup. And so I'm either between 70 and 140. And that feels good because if I skip a day, I don't feel it. Like I can, if I get my good sleep, because I have been focusing on sleep, like I've been getting my 8 a lot more frequently since May than I did before. Gotcha. And so if I get my 8, like one little cup of coffee, like right after I get up, is more of just a pleasurable experience.
Yes.
But, and I don't need anything else. And some days if I sleep less, I'll drink one in the morning, but then I won't have one right after. I'll wait till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon and then have one. And that's based off of like the military recommendations for coffees. It's 2 cups a day, once in the morning when you first get up, and then one about 1 o'clock.
I gotcha. Yeah. No, after our data in nutrition episode, I did my best to try to drink 1 glass of water before I have my first cup of coffee.
Oh yeah? How's that going?
It's easy.
Are you chugging it?
Pretty much. I like to take vitamin C and a multivitamin, or now I'm doing fish oil based on that recommendation from that one.
Are you? Well, we can
Capsule.
talk about that separate. Yeah. But do you know what the EPA in it is?
Oh, no idea. I did buy the most expensive one because that means that's the best. I did research it and find one. And again, we can go offline for that one.
We can nerd out.
Yes. But try to get that 1 glass in. So that was my big thing. I think that's this idea of testing, you're finding your data, and there's ways to do it through watches, through devices, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just gotta do it the A/B test way. Yeah. Get rid of something, see what it does, and then go from there. And so your No Fun May, I had No Fun July 18th. No, I'm just kidding.
Have you noticed a difference when you drink the water in the morning? Like any?
I'm not sure.
I feel like most of the impact would come in the early afternoon from the morning water.
Yeah, without getting into old man talk, I went there again. Anyways, all right. Anything else to catch up on?
I just want to brag about my superpower that I picked up this summer.
Okay, what's your superpower?
It's being impervious to the heat.
Please elaborate.
All right, so I believe I mentioned it before, but in the remodel, I got a steam shower, which is basically I can just turn my shower into a steam room.
Okay.
And when we finished, I started doing it every day. So I do 20 minutes, and I started at 110 degrees. And 110 degrees in a steam room, it's hot.
Okay.
Like to compare, I can sit in a sauna, which is dry. It's dry heat at 180 degrees for 20 minutes, and feel better than 20 minutes at 110 degrees in the steam shower.
And 110 degrees that's in a steam shower is like the average Tennessee day right now.
It's pretty close to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but actually, it's pretty close to it. So I upped the steam shower a couple of weeks ago to 115 degrees.
Ooh.
And when I go outside, and so just so everybody's listening, we live in Nashville, and this is the worst time to live in Nashville because it'll be high 90s with 85+% humidity.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how heat index works, it's too humid here for us for sweat to evaporate off our skins, and so we just get wet and we stay wet the entire time, and we get hot and we stay hot. But I've been impervious to the heat in that it just hasn't bothered me. Yeah. I've been out outside doing stuff, like I sweat profusely now because my body's conditioned to get hot, and that's just something that happens when you do exercise on a regular basis, or you do a sauna or something. It's like your body's like, oh, we're going there. Yeah, just gush sweat. Yep. And so apart from the sweat, I just feel comfortable outside. And so I'm pretty sure that makes me better than everybody else.
Well, or almost as good as me, because I can be out in 110 degrees and it doesn't bother me at all. I can run 10 miles, not drink a thing. And
well, I'm coming for you then.
Yes. And to the point where my running buddies used to call me the camel because I never needed water. And but I used to go for a 20-mile run, usually in trails, so I didn't have direct sun.
Yeah. It's still hot though.
It's hot, yeah, and muggy, and I could do that with just one handheld water.
Oh, that's cool.
Do the 20 miles, yeah.
I don't know. I say that's cool, but is it really though? Because did you hurt your body when you're doing that?
I've done so. Yeah. Yes. Of course. All right. So what is this data for concept? We got this incredible podcast called Data with a number 4, all. And so we decided to play on that. What is this? What do you feel is this? We're kind of making this up right now, right?
Yeah, we're being cheeky
yes.
with talking about it.
Yeah.
But essentially you and I were having a conversation about how we go to weekly content.
Okay.
Because the podcast is every other week, and the first year has really been about, can we maintain our lives and do a podcast? Correct. And so I think that between you and I and Jeremy, because we can't forget Jeremy, because I've recently learned how much time Jeremy saves us with this.
Especially the data literacy episode where we lost power. We had wasps falling from the ceiling, all that.
It was very eventful.
It was fun.
But how do we go from every 2 weeks to every week? Because we feel like a weekly cadence is the appropriate thing. And it's like, okay, well, we want to be informational or educational, but then we also want to be entertaining. And so how could we have some infotainment that's more, it's less this kind of free form conversation stuff and more kind of pre-programmed, like, here's some things to look at. And so you actually came up with the idea for the data 4s. And then we kind of riffed on it from there. And so what we've decided is that we're gonna put together material and just kind of do like our top 4 this, our top 4 that, or 4 things that we like over here. And so today's episode of the podcast is going to be like a preview into what the data 4s will be.
Okay.
This is more just like the talking format, but there could be more interactive pieces to the data 4s. But that's going to be like us sitting in front of a camera, talking to the camera more often than not, or at least that's how we have it envisioned.
Okay.
And we're going to be doing that from separate locations too, right? Because you have something pretty big on the horizon from your end, right?
Yes, on Tuesday of this week. So basically in 3 days from now, which will be August 1st. So if you're hearing this, it's already happened, obviously. We are moving into a brand new building, and we have some pretty amazing capabilities in there on Belmont's campus. And I've got a view of downtown Nashville, but on a separate floor, we built out a room. Definitely not the capabilities we have here, but it will give us the ability to do a 15-minute YouTuber kind of thing. And that's the point of that. So the idea then of the data 4s is more like a 15-minute chunk, something that's a list of some sort. It could be a list, top 4 things we like. Could be a top 4 from a conceptual standpoint. Obviously, there's going to be a lot. This is a great way for us to get out the fun that we're doing in the AI space. I know we're gonna do that today. So I think our only rules right now are going to be that it has to be data or tech specific, and it's got to be 4.
Yeah. We kind of cheat though with the data specific because, or at least
data.
yeah. My perception of data is that it runs all technology, or it's what technology is built on. Yeah. And so anything technology related is data related to me.
Gotcha. And I think we should try today's practice then, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to do 3 topics or 3 data 4s. So that means we have to be 15 minutes. That way we finish in our normal time for the podcast. The first one is going to be a shared one. The second one is going to be Charlie doing his thing. He came up with whatever that one is. And then I'm going to one of my crazy concepts for data for the last one.
Yeah.
Fair enough? Mm-hmm. All right. So
good luck, everybody. 15 minutes is going to be more difficult to stay under than over.
I'm looking at the time. I'm going to even try my best to give Charlie a 5 minute, a 1 minute, and then we're going to go over.
Yeah. So just so everybody's aware, we're about to start this on the top of the hour. And so it'll be easy for us to just look at the clock. But I still don't have confidence that we're going to make it each segment 15 minutes.
So the data 4s. Now we don't have a cool thing to start it yet. That's okay. So topic 1. Should we just go right into it?
Yeah. So go for it.
No, I want you to have the pleasure of.
Okay. So topic 1: 4 AI tools that blow our minds.
Ooh, so the data 4 top. Okay. I'm going to go with the first one. Some of you may have out there seen a video that I did on this topic. And it was me for the first time using Code Interpreter in ChatGPT.
Well, what is Code Interpreter?
Code Interpreter is the ability to write code within ChatGPT if you have a premium account. So if you pay the $20 a month, when you go in and you click on GPT-4, it'll say default or it'll say Code Interpreter.
Once you've enabled it, which you talk about in your video.
Oh, I do. Yeah. So I'll tell you, if you have any interest, and I highly recommend everybody, if you're listening to this and you want to write your first line of code or you want to get better at code, go watch that video. At this point there'll be more. I know I'm planning to do a lot more, specifically on how to write some data sciencey code is what I'll be doing.
Oh, I was a hacker for a while. I don't know if you know this or not, but I watched your video and I started playing with my own data.
Yeah.
And I intentionally, every time it would start working the Python stuff, I would click on it and just watch all that code scroll. I was just like, look at what I'm doing.
Yeah. And by the way, it's not as good as me yet.
Okay.
Tongue in cheek, and we're going to test it. So yours going to be the Dr. A versus Code Interpreter videos for sure. But the first one that I did, I just went in and started writing code. So what I did is I put in one of my publicly available data sets, specifically for hypertension, and I said, do a cluster analysis.
Yeah. And
it walked through and even asked me questions. Do you want to do this with the data? Do you want to do this? And in the end, I was like, okay, that's great, but it's not going to create the CSV file, the Excel file, and give it to me. And I was like, give me the file in this format. And it did. Yeah. And that's when my mind was blown. So definitely something that blew my mind.
Yeah. And so when I was going into it, you had data that you put into it and you just like do a k-means cluster and it did it. And I put my data in and I said, do a k-means cluster. And it was like, whoa. Your data is trash. Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily the data was trash. It was just a CSV file. And some of our, and so just so you guys are aware, it wasn't CSV, it was TSV. So it's tab separated values. Yeah. And so that means that there's a tab between each value and how that's how it separates. But in our system, I can put a tab in a description field. And so it was reading those as breaks. And it was just like, hey, this is kind of messed up. And it walked me through converting it to a different file format and all this other kind of stuff. But ultimately what I had to do was just open up the original TSV and then save it in Excel and then reload it.
Gotcha.
But it helped me with all that. And so I didn't know squat about like what it was going to do or anything like that. And it walked me from I had no no idea like what I was doing as far as all that kind of stuff goes, but it walked me through it, explained the steps to me, explained the options.
Yep.
And then we proceeded. And in the end, I did, like I just used it to initially clean the data. And so I took 2 different data sets and combined them into one. And it was way better than anything I'd done before. And it took me 5 minutes, where in the past I'd done the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's hours and hours and hours of work.
Yeah. And, you still need to be a human and understand what you're doing with it. But as it's going through there, it asks you questions. Like you have one field that is text. Do you want to convert that? And you can say yes, and converting it into dummy variables or whatever it tells you to do. And then even in the end, it says, you got results. Would you like us to visualize it for you?
Yeah.
And then it also used something called principal component analysis. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And so the ability to get started with data, or even if it doesn't do it perfectly, you get to see the steps, and that's sometimes 10 weeks in a class. I mean, and you're getting the instant feedback. It is mind-blowing for sure. So that's definitely our first.
Well, hang on, I got one more thing. All right. So I put the data into the code interpreter, and one of our fields is a description field. And so it's like whatever we do in the ticket is supposed to go in that block, and it's just text format, or it's just text. And so I asked it, how many nouns are in the description field on average? And it was like, okay, so you need to convert to the language model, or the natural language processing transformers or whatever. And so it said you can do that, but that takes a lot of processing power. Do you want to continue with all of the data? I said yes. And then it was just like, no, we're not going to allow you to do this. So here's your Python code that's going to take a sample. And so all you got to do is just put this into your own machine now, and your machine will run it. And so it wouldn't do it, but it gave me all the code for it. And then
it didn't want to pay for it, basically, because it would have been their processing.
Right, because it's figuring out what a noun is.
Yeah.
Then I went back and asked it how many times an expletive, like I was looking for the F word.
Gotcha.
Because I didn't expect to see it, but who knows?
That's right.
And so it turns out there wasn't any in there. But then I said, look for this specific word, and then it just did it. And so from a quality control perspective, if you run a help desk and you're looking for certain keywords, you can do that super duper easy now.
Yeah, wow, that's good stuff. All right, remember we gotta stay on topic.
Time. This
is not an hour and a half. This is meant to be 15. Number 2 on this list, I'll go with this one since it's something I play with almost daily, and it's basically Midjourney. Midjourney is a AI tool that blows my mind because it allows me to create AI images with just a prompt.
Yeah.
And when you get good at that, it is amazing. So anybody that watches our YouTube videos, every background is created in Midjourney. So you'll see the one that we did for What is Data Literacy, that video with Valerie Logan. It's a futuristic cabin behind us. And the reason it's a cabin, Data Lodge, which is her company. So I just said, give me a lodge that's futuristic, that looks like data. And that's what it gave me. And then, of course, I go in and make that a background. I fade it, do all this other stuff. I probably could even say, put a hue of green on it, and it would do it if I asked it to. So really cool. Have you played with Midjourney? Have you played with it? What AI image stuff have you done?
I've done a fair amount of stuff with Dolly, but Dolly's nothing compared to Midjourney.
Yeah, and it's the hard part with Midjourney is you got to have a Discord server to do it right.
Yeah, it's run. Well, I mean, it's run through Discord.
It is.
So you sign up for the account, and then you go into Discord, which is not a big barrier for me. I just didn't want to pay for the premium to get my own channel.
Yeah.
And so I put it into like whatever I'm looking for. Like my daughter wanted, she's got this weird thing where she wants to see every animal in a tuxedo, basically.
Okay.
And so we'll go on there and we'll put a shark in a tuxedo or something like that. And then it'll spit something out, but finding it in the channel is like, it's a pain in the butt because everybody's in there using it. And they've only got 3 available for thousands and thousands of people. And so it's not like, without paying for it, I don't get that private experience,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it way more valuable. Because I've seen you mess with yours, and you're just like, okay, well, that my image instantly came up. Now let me
Yeah.
do the editing to it.
Yeah, it's
'Cause
worth the money for me. Yeah.
you've memorized the buttons to hit to do the revisions almost automatically.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, it keeps getting better. So the recent version is 5.2.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to create variations, allows you to zoom in, zoom out. You can square it off. You can also, there's a lot of syntax. You do dash, and then there's a bunch of different properties. So like if I'm doing one for the actual thumbnail for the podcast, for the actual podcast that goes out to Apple and Spotify and things like that, I want that to be square. So I do dash AR 1:1, so that makes a square, one by one.
Yeah.
And then if I want it to be for a YouTube video, I do dash AR 16:9. And then you start learning words. You do hyper realistic if you want it to look real.
Yeah.
The coolest thing I did is when I went and spoke to a retirement home about artificial intelligence, which I may have mentioned before. But when I did, I said, do a hyper realistic Yoda sitting in a coffee shop drinking a latte. And it came up, and these folks were like, are you kidding me? And it was good. It was
Blew some minds.
Oh, I blew some minds. So yes. The other ones that you could use, there's Stable Diffusion out there. Leonardo.ai, pretty good. And you can get away with using that just like you would with the paid version of Midjourney, and it would be free. Now, I, of course, bought stuff because I was playing with it. And again, we're talking like $5 here, $10 here. That's usually the cost of these. ChatGPT was $20. Midjourney, I think, is $10.96 is what I'm charged
is it?
with tax. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it's not terrible. And to me, that is worth it for the amount that I use it. Leonardo, what's neat about that one is it gives you the option to use different engines. And so Leonardo.ai, you can say use Stable Diffusion, use, all these, I'm trying to remember all the different ones off the top of my head that are AI image generators, but it gives you all these different options to do that. You can see everybody else's stuff, but you get your own channel. You can even put in video, your own images, and it will store those as a training set. And then, like I did that for me, and then, but it's still not very good. I'm still not doing it the right way to get realistic versions of me.
We'll get there though. I mean, because you can do it manually, like we've talked about before with Hugging Face and Stable Diffusion, and but you can there's an app on iOS. I'll look it up and put it in the show notes. But it's $10 for 100 AI images.
Yeah.
And before we had access to this, I did that, and it was really cool. But I wouldn't want to do $10 for 100 images. It seems like well, if I'm just going for one pack, that's probably good, and I don't have to mess with things. Because from what you're saying, it's like learning how to do images in AI is its own skill.
It is, and there'll be little things like my eyes won't look right. It makes them way too dark. One I know of is Beautiful AI, I think, is one of the apps. I used it to give you 112 images of yourself. And I did that for myself and my dog, and the dogs were awesome. That was really, really cool. Imagine Me is another one that's you pay for, and it is basically going to a website, putting in a couple images, and it spits out any version. You want to be Barbie, it'll create Barbie for you, all of that. So anyways, that's a little bit, again, where we're meant to go through these kind of rapid fire. What's our third one, Charlie?
Where we're going to presentations and websites?
Yeah, so presentation and website AI stuff that blows our mind. What's one that you've encountered recently where it creates either a presentation or creates a website, basically, is what we're looking at here.
Oh, yeah. So Moxie.io is one.
Okay.
And then our mutual friend, Shauna Sprague, was showing me one the other day, too, where she just put in a prompt and the AI built an entire business and the website and all this other kind of stuff.
So the prompt created all the HTML code, behind the scenes, CSS, and created a website. Did it structure it looking like a
Yeah, I
really
mean, it
nice
looked
one?
like a real website. It had it even made up a couple of customer tutorials. It built
Wow.
a registration list so you can put in your email address and send it back. And it's just you literally just copy it and paste it into like a GoDaddy situation or something like that, and you're all done. Actually, you can host from. I want to say it was Moxie, but you can host from there too.
Gotcha.
And so you can literally do all of this and just click a button, and it just puts
Goes
it
to
out on
the
the
internet
internet for you.
Wow, that's a lot easier than all the stuff I've had to do in the past. And my web design days go back to 97, 98, something like that. So definitely a little different. Yeah, the one thing I was going to highlight here, and the reason we added presentations is I've been using Beautiful.ai for about 2 years, and they've added this AI component in the last 3 months where I can do a prompt and it automatically creates the slide for me. And I've got some examples. And I can literally, I will put in a link in the show notes to one of those presentations, but I've done it where I put a little star on the ones where I AI generate it. And then after my presentation, I'm like, oh, by the way, these are the ones that were created by AI. But like the history of AI with an image and in 4 different eras, and it did it for me perfectly.
So instead of you having to reference that for people who don't do PowerPoints or have not done like a sequential kind of like presentation before, like that takes a lot of time to get your point A, point B, point C, and point D into a PowerPoint presentation while still making sure that you've got it all in order.
Yes, and I would have to find out the information. I'd have to go find images that I like, which sometimes takes hours.
Yeah.
I've gotten in that rabbit hole.
It's design stuff, and so design stuff you can go as deep or as detailed as you want.
Yeah, and so anyways, that was one that I really like. It saved me some time for sure, and I think and we mentioned Shauna, and we'll be having her on here soon. She's somebody that really does an amazing job of what can you use in AI that's from a productivity standpoint. So number 4, I'm going to keep us going.
Yeah.
You have a plugin that you think, or is it an extension or a plugin?
It's an extension.
All right. What's the difference between a plugin and an extension for a browser? We're talking about something in like Chrome.
Sure. Yeah. So an extension is in this case it's a Chrome extension that essentially works as a little program that connects 2 pieces of software connects software to the browser.
Okay.
Earlier you were talking about a plugin when you're talking about Code Interpreter. That's a plugin that's offered by OpenAI for ChatGPT. And so we'll get into some plugins, some other plugins in just a second, but this is an extension. So I went into the Chrome extension store and downloaded GLASP.
GLASP, GLASP. Okay.
And so what it does is it takes every time I pull up a YouTube video in my browser now, it's got this little button up there. Like we were talking about this yesterday, and you said, and then you'll talk about GLASP, and I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, you didn't know that was what it's called.
I forgot its name because it's just a little button.
Yeah.
And I click the button, and it immediately takes the entire transcript from the video and puts it into GPT. And then it gives me an overview of what's in the video.
What's in that video? Nice.
So if it's informative video, it'll just break down the points point by point. And I've been doing that with our clip videos.
Gotcha.
And so I put I pull up the clip, I hit the button, and then it generates like talking points basically, and then I just tell it, now make this into a social media post. And if I don't mess with it at all, it can give me really long stuff. It can give me really it's not consistent with the type of reply that it gives me or the type of social media post. But then I've learned that if I prompt it to do a cool tone and some other things, that it'll settle down some. Like, because it comes in hot with like the new episode today.
Oh,
and all this other kind of stuff, and emojis and exclamation points and all this other kind of stuff. And so I had to settle it down, and it had to be shorter overall.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing that. And the very first time when I started posting on our social medias, it would take me about 2 hours to do 5 posts and then load them to all the sites and stuff.
Yeah.
And the majority of that is just the writing.
Gotcha.
It's just getting the stuff written out like I want to. Now the writing piece takes seconds to generate what I'm calling my first draft. And then all I do is just edit it from there. And then I change, like it'll say the speaker, and then I'll change it to, like you or me or whoever. And I'll make it more personal, but that saves me so much time, and I'm glad I came across it.
Well, great. All right. So we are over, but not by much, just a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
So to recap, these were AI tools that blow our minds, and we highlighted Code Interpreter, Midjourney, and then within presentations and websites, we looked at Moxie.io and Beautiful.ai. And then for an extension, you brought up Glasp. All right, we did it. All right, first one done. We're going to have to get snappy with how we end them and all this other stuff, but we're not there yet.
No, not yet. We did keep it to under 20 minutes, which I'm happy about.
Yes, we did. Yeah, for sure. All right, the second one is yours, Charlie. I don't even know what we're talking about here. I see the topic, so I'll let you just go with it. So data for
Plugins.
Plugins.
No. So it's data for... this will be the data for using AI to save time.
Using AI to save time is always something that we're just dying to do. Okay.
Yeah, in normal everyday life. And it doesn't have to be work stuff. So
number one,
I have to preface this though, because I mentioned in our AI episodes how I was going to revolutionize, we'll say, my weekly shopping experience. Or my weekly meal planning. And then when Sherry was in here, she was talking about meal planning is the most important part to making sure you eat right. And I spend a couple hours a week figuring out what I'm going to cook, getting the ingredients listed out and things like that. And I said back in that episode, when I have access to plugins, I'm going to streamline the whole thing.
Okay.
And this week I was actually able to do the whole process. And so I took essentially what is 2 hours worth of work and whittle it down to about 4 minutes.
Okay.
So
what did you use? Come on now.
So I just used GPT, and then in GPT I enabled plugins. And so when you put that video out on the data science or the data journey stuff, that was the first, like, you opened the floodgate for me, because I didn't know that I could enable the plugins yet.
Gotcha.
So I was still waiting for the plugins to be delivered or whatnot. And so I found out that you can only have 3 available at a time. And so I went through, they've got a popular section and an all section.
And where is that list? Is it somewhere in ChatGPT?
Yeah. So when you click on 4, it says plugins, and then you click on plugins and it'll show you what you've got, but then it'll say, download plugins.
Gotcha.
And
all
then
right, we're definitely going to have to create that video.
Yeah. And you've got to you can select up to 3 at a time, but you can have a bunch of plugins. And so if you need to switch from this set of 3 to that set of 3 in a different chat, because you're doing a different thing, that's totally fine.
Gotcha.
But in each chat, you can only have 3 at once. And so mine was Wolfram Alpha, Open Table, and actually I've got a PDF reader. So Open Table, or Instacart, not Open Table.
PDF reader.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into that in just a second, because that's it's blowing my mind.
Gotcha.
But using Instacart and Wolfram Alpha, my prompt was, create a menu with 4 meals that are not too complex: 1 breakfast, 1 pasta, 1 meat, and 1 fish meal with a starch and a vegetable for each entree. And then I'll share this reply. It gave me 4 meals. That's exactly what I asked for. And then it said, would you like for me to create a shopping list for these? And I said, please. I replied, please. And then the next thing was an Instacart link that I clicked on, and everything was there. The only reason I didn't buy the stuff in the moment was because it had fish in it, and I want to get the fish closer to the time. And it says, like, this was like at 2 p.m. when I was doing this, and it said this stuff will be delivered by 4:30.
Oh my gosh!
And so tomorrow is my grocery shopping day, and I'm just going to buy Instacart.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And if I could, we buy most of our groceries through Amazon Fresh, which we have a Whole Foods pretty close to us. I think everything now comes from there. Even though traffic is terrible in that area, which I was in yesterday. I was mentioning it to you. But yeah, I think that ability to plug into that, Instacart, we've used in the past as well. That is pretty cool. And now for us, I will say, now that we're empty nesters, we are using that stuff as part of our pleasure.
Yeah, that's
but with kids at home and you want to save time, that makes more sense.
That's a good point. It's a good point to bring up though, because like we're talking about like saving time and doing things. And if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, I enjoy making a menu, and I enjoy going and picking out all my food. Like that's completely and totally understandable.
Yep.
I don't.
Yeah, and like my wife and I have Monday night international cooking night where we do the cooking, and so we've done Korean, we did our own paella, we did Italian, and we've done Japanese. So far.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah, and it's our, for it's not even that we're saving money. We don't care about that. It's we're doing this together, and with a bottle of wine or whatever
just having a good time.
Having a good time, and
I like it.
and that's our Mondays, and so. Like we're going today after this, which is a Saturday, to grocery shop for Monday.
Oh, cool.
And that's part of our experience. Okay, that's a great one.
So it's a couple hours per week saved already.
There you go. So the next one on your list, so number 2.
So number 2 would be the PDF reader.
Okay.
Which is another plugin from OpenAI for ChatGPT. And essentially, well, it's not from OpenAI. It's a PDF reader that's a part of the store.
Okay.
So a third party made the PDF reader. There's tons of them though. There's a bunch of different PDF readers. I took a PDF from work, and because most of our documentation is kept in PDF form, and I put it in there, and it didn't have any like sensitive information on it. But one of the things that we do is we keep all of our knowledge base formatted in a certain way, and so we should be able to ask it questions, and this is what I've been anticipating. So I put the PDF in there, and I just started asking it questions, and it started hammering them out. And then it like the actual answers, and I know the answers because this is my PDF.
Sure.
And I was like, well, what if I take a research paper and then put it in here and see what it says? Because I got to ask questions, and so. I was doing some research for the parenting episode that we're going to do in the future. Because I was like, how much in 2023, what's the specific screen time that a kid, that's recommended for kids? And so, I see a lot of research, and there's websites who have like study after study after study. And then this study says that it's this, and that study says that it's this other thing. But then abstracts can be funky too, because if you want to not mislead, but if you want to cater to a certain group, you write an abstract in a certain way.
Sure.
And so I downloaded the PDF, which most research papers that I know of, at least, you can get, you pretty much get free access unless you go through.
And I can get them all being at a university for sure.
And so I put it in there, and I loaded the file. And this one was one of the ones, like I was playing devil's advocate. So this is one of the ones that's saying that screen time limiting is, we don't know. Like we have an idea, but we don't know, and it doesn't seem to be that impactful. But then when you actually get into the research, what they're saying is like they're arguing with methodology from other papers more than they're like putting forth their own stuff.
Yep.
And in academia, that's how it works. So somebody does a study, and then 18 other professors that have never had an original idea in their mind, but they know methodology, will go and they'll wreck it. And then they'll put their findings out there. And then you say, okay, well, here's all the problems with your initial study. Now go redo it. Or
we are trying to come to the correct conclusion, and you need a lot of different viewpoints to actually come up with that. Yeah, no, I understand what you mean.
So short of reading the paper, which would have taken me an hour, maybe even 2 to really ingest it, I just started asking questions about the paper. Gotcha. And what it would do is it would say, here's the answer to your question, and it's on page 8. And then here's something that says something else, or something that's like contradictory on page 12. And so that's where the ultimate revelation of the paper was, like, we don't know. There is a detriment to it, but we don't know where the line is right now.
Wow. I was thinking about that. I was looking at the report from the White House on AI and their stance right now. And I just didn't want to read it. And so I need to download that sucker. And if it's not a PDF, make it a PDF, because I think it's the best way for ChatGPT to be able to read at this point, and then have it do that. No, that's really interesting. And by the way, the parenting episode already happened. We're recording out of sequence, but the parenting one will come before this. So for the people out there, parenting, yes, that was our last episode.
Oh, well, if we're getting into details, it's because we had a guest and we had to flip flop
Yeah.
stuff for a guest.
That's right. We do our best to accommodate guests. All right, keep going because we're trying to keep on that schedule. We're doing okay here. What's your number 3 for plugins that save you time?
So I'm just going to go ahead and say a code interpreter.
Okay.
Like from a business perspective, I have like I mentioned earlier,
Yep.
I used Code Interpreter to find things that would have taken me a long time before, and it puts the power of data science at your fingertips.
Yeah.
And like I'm a lay person when it comes to the technical aspects of data science, but just off of watching your video and following up with some of the prompts in GPT, like I was successful in playing with data. Like playing for data with me is just like that's Excel. It's manually moving stuff around. It's slow, but I was able to accomplish hours and hours and hours worth of manipulation and cleanup in just a few minutes.
Yeah. I mean, this idea of this podcast was we believed back then that data is going to take over the world kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we didn't know where AI was going.
Well, I don't think AI was on our radar.
No,
when
I
we
mean,
started.
we started this now 18 months ago, I would say, since we're at 1 year, we started recording in, August, September, but we had this idea in January of 2022. And it was definitely not on our radar. We just knew that data needed to be embraced by everybody. And we wanted to be something that we thought would be accessible to all. And Code Interpreter is that one of those plugins that's out there. I will say this about Code Interpreter that I didn't mention. I have a person on my team in the data collaborative that's pretty good at the data sciencey stuff, but he would even say that he's newer to it. He's really good at a lot of the other parts of analytics. And so I said, go and try this using Code Interpreter and come back to me, and then I'll explain what you've got. And so he did. And we talked about, okay, you chose 3 clusters. Why? I don't know. Okay, that's fine. But let me show you. And so he even went and there's a systematic way of determining the number of clusters. And I told him how to kind of do that. And then he went back to Code Interpreter and incorporated that, and it came back really good. Yeah. Really good. And then I went into, okay, here's what I would do next to really get to the actionable solution. He's like, so I was able to spend more time on how to actually analyze the results,
like the philosophy,
and turning it into action. The actual thing we're doing, which is problem solving, instead of spending my entire time talking about syntax.
So it saved you a lot of time already.
Oh my gosh! And think about the scale now. If I can let Code Interpreter or other AI tools take care of syntax, and all I'm doing is helping people understand how to take that and solve problems, I can do that. I couldn't do both.
Yeah, it's like trying to explain to somebody why they've got an extra space versus like why this particular action is the appropriate action.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, a great one. Obviously, definitely saving both of us time. Your number 4.
My number 4 is writing. So I'm an okay writer. I'm definitely way better than I used to be, but I'm a slow writer because I like to, I've had to learn how to write. Like I slam out a really crappy first draft because I used to fret too much over the first draft, and now I just slam it out, and it's not the best, and then I'll revise it from there. Sure. And in the end, I'll usually have a pretty good piece. But that's after I've read it out loud multiple times and I don't get caught up on any of the sentences and stuff. But what I've been doing is I've been taking like that sloppy first draft kind of approach and then putting it in GPT and saying, write this better. And it does. 99 times out of 100 so far, it's written me something that I could literally just copy and paste. And we're talking about like, informative emails and things like that. Not personal things or anything like that. This is like business, straightforward. I'm communicating information type stuff. Gotcha. And it's been so good from that aspect, and I can't tell you how much time I've saved because I use it anytime I have to write something essentially. And so like I've written white papers with it before. I've written columns with it before. It's helping me with the editing process in a way that like I don't even fret about writing. Like I used to do a blog, and I tried to do at least 500 words, and now I can write a blog that's like 350 words, and I'd put it in GPT and I say, make this 500 words.
Yeah.
And it's putting 150 words worth of bloat in there for sure. And so that's not something that I want to do on a regular basis, but it's possible. And if I've got to get something out, then I can.
Yeah, something I'll do, because a lot of times I have to create almost like a glossary, for terms and things like that. And if I put in the words and say, give me the definition based on a fifth grader understanding it, or things like that, it gives me a really
explain like I'm 5.
Yeah. Yeah. And it gives, I've done that with some data science stuff, and in almost every case I have to tweak it. And it's not because I'm trying to put it into my voice. I just want it to be the best way to explain something.
Sure.
And so I feel like I can understand that. No, I think that's really helpful. And I think there's going to be good and bad, and then, a great example. I went to a soccer game in Atlanta, and on the way back past Kennesaw State University, and I saw a big sign that said Master of Arts in Professional Writing. And I'm like, getting a master's in professional writing with what ChatGPT can do today, I don't know if that's the career path I want to pursue.
See, now you're making it hard to stay to the 15 or stick to the 15
Oh yeah,
minutes.
I'm sorry. We won't go off on that. So we'll have to do data in education for real, because it's different from the last time we've talked about it because of AI. All right. So meal planning and shopping, great one. I can't wait for you to show me those offline, and maybe we need to create a video of that. That'd be really cool. Yeah. The research part, using a PDF reader, that's a great one. Code interpreter was number 3 for you, and then just the ability to write, number 4.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we did it. We were 16 minutes.
Okay, so it's better.
We're there. All right, we're not bad.
So the last one is on you.
I know that, which there's no way I can stay under anything.
We'll see.
All right. Well,
what's yours on?
Well, my data 4 is my 4 tenets of a data mindset. Okay.
Please explain.
All right. Well, if you go back to our episode 24 with Valerie Logan, she mentioned, and I piggybacked on it, this idea of what you're trying to build within a person or within an organization is a mindset.
Yeah.
And it's not about just skills. And so it's a mindset, it's language, and it's skills. If you heard the way Valerie explained it very well, please go back and listen to that episode if you haven't. And so I've always thought of it as a data mindset. Literally, I have a playbook that I give out in curriculum, and it's called the data mindset. And I have 4 steps in that. This isn't the 4 steps. That's dilemma, data, insight, action. This is what it does. So the reason you need a data mindset, there's basically 4 things that I came up with, and I'd love to share that.
Let's hear it then.
All right. So the first one is, when you're talking about data and you're needing to express it, you gotta know your audience.
Yeah.
And who is your audience, and most importantly, who is not your audience. Okay. So when you start any project, when you're gathering data, you're gathering what the problem really is before you get to insights and problem solving. Who are you doing this for? And the problem in almost every case is people think the audience is themselves.
How do you figure that?
So when you create a visual, you're creating the coolest thing you possibly can.
Oh, for yourself.
And it's for you. It's not, in most cases, the person that is your audience is not technically savvy. They're a decision maker. They need something in seconds. They don't need 50 bar charts.
Yeah.
They want an answer. And too often people give them everything that they found and never get to the point.
In business, this is a common conversation.
Oh, it's literally the reason people want me in the room these days is to debunk this.
Bridge the gap.
Yeah.
It's the I wouldn't necessarily say it's always the younger generation, but it's a younger group of people because they just haven't learned the lesson yet of knowing your audience. And so they make the PowerPoint presentations with a paragraph on each slide.
Yeah.
Or, to your point, they just go too far into the weeds when all that's needed is a high level overview.
Yeah. It's get to the point is what the decision maker wants. the data owners might be part of the audience, might be a customer, could be leadership, could be a colleague. Almost never is it you.
Yeah.
And unless it literally is, I'm doing some analysis for myself, but then, we're not getting into, working in a team and all this other stuff.
Yeah, you're not going to present to yourself either.
Yes, that's right. You're just going to do it. You're going to do a pivot table and move on.
Yeah.
And so that's my number one. I think this is always something that if there's ever a problem, it's because they did not truly identify their audience in the beginning.
So to kind of like encompass this thing. So knowing your audience is just being aware of like your environment in a way that where you can use the data to its best effect.
Yes, and know that when you're conveying whatever message, whatever action you're trying to achieve, you can do that in a way that is either simple or detailed or whatever it's needed based on the audience that you might have to know the personality of the person, right? And so some people want detail. Some people want an encyclopedia after the fact.
Yeah.
Some people you can send an email to the day before and they'll read it. Some people won't.
No.
And I know a lot of people that you say, hey, I sent you that email 2 days ago. They haven't even looked at emails from 3 days ago. So, okay, then don't send them an email and get mad at them for not reading the email the night before. I've had it where somebody sent me an email. This was a presentation from yesterday. They sent me an email at 8 o'clock the night before that I needed to read. It was going to take about a half hour. And the presentation was 8 a.m. the next day. So I had to, between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., read a half hour of work. That is not realistic. That is not fair to me to expect me to do something between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. To get ready for that presentation. So then the presentation actually was kind of bad because they're asking me questions. And I'm like, no, I didn't read that. I got a good night's sleep, And so anyways, that's number one, know your audience.
Yeah, I like it.
Good. All right. So second one, I've said this 100 times, but I got to say it because it's one of the 4 tenets and it is what it is. Data is not perfect. And we really got a dose of that when Dan Bauk came on about the U.S. Census. And he mentioned how U.S. Census data is gathered and collected for statistics. Stop thinking of it as the individual data point. Think of it as the aggregate. And a lot of the data that we collect is meant to be aggregated.
Yeah.
And if that's...
hang on, what do you mean by that? Because I think this is worth going into because I've had this conversation 3 times just this week that data is not perfect. And if somebody says statistically speaking, what they mean is a certain percentage out of 100. And so it's statistically speaking, it could be 97 out of 100. And so if you've got that one anecdotal, this exists, it's like that can exist and still be statistically significant.
Right. And it goes to, again, knowing your audience, knowing the objective. If what you're trying to do is just, know that one thing is more than another. Yeah. And it's based on, an average income within a community versus another community. Yeah. You don't need to know every single household, but if you have a good sample from that area, and samples can be as small as 30 and be good, to be a good random sample. You can achieve that and still come to the same decision. We don't need to be so defined for a blunt decision, basically.
Well, so here's the example that was the most prevalent this week, and I want to get your take on it. So do you know the statistics on conspiracy theories? Like how likely it is to keep a lie under wraps?
I don't know the actual numbers.
Okay. So approximately the way that it works is like the more people who are involved, the shorter the amount of time that something stays a secret.
Sure.
And so, the moon landing is probably one of the bigger conspiracy theories that falls into this because there's so many people that would be involved in the conspiracy that it would come out at some point. Sure. It's statistically impossible to expect that to not come out because so many people are involved. Well, then people look at that on an individual level and say, oh, well, people can't keep secrets, which is overall true. Statistically, it's true. But then they're like, I can keep a secret. So that means that's a lie. And
that's a very good point.
And that breaks the trust between you and the data. And that's the point of this. Data is not perfect.
Yes.
but it's statistically great.
Yes. And to give an example, I did a presentation for a consulting firm that does warehouse optimization. They're on the manufacturing side. And they talked about how they did a study and they came up with a way that could save them like 15 minutes in a day. And they said, yeah, we don't trust that it's 15 minutes. So can you go gather more data or we want to be there the next time you do this? And so they started getting all into this. And it's like, do you not believe it's 15? You think it's 14? Or do you think it's going to add time? Because what is it? And the truth is they thought it was 14 instead of 15. It's like, we're saving you time. Do you believe that we are going to save you time if we change the process to this? And he's like, what do you do when the customer doesn't trust you? And I'm like, here's where understanding that data is not perfect from the beginning and conveying that to your customer, to the audience on day one. Look, data is not perfect. ChatGPT does it, right? It tells you that it's only as good as the data that's in the large language model. You need to be that. If you can say, look, it's not going to be exactly 15 if I come back at 15, but it's going to be pretty close. And if you trust me, I can save you money, but you got to let me get there. Are you willing to go on that journey with me? That to me is where data can, even though it's not perfect, be a major advantage. And we got to get data trust is like a real thing. Nobody trusts the data that goes in. They don't trust the results that come out. And therefore they continue to not use data to make decisions. And that's why just embrace it.
Well, I mean, that's literally why we're here.
That's right. That's right.
We are here doing this podcast because we feel that it's important for people to understand what they're sitting on, what they're working with, and like how the world works now. And every data in news, data in music, data in like series that we've done has just been how data works in those specific industries. And so people are going to continue to lean more heavily into data. And so we as the average citizen, like it's this, Valerie, we were talking about this with Valerie, like we as citizens need to know how this works. We need to know that the data is not perfect, but we need to also understand how we derive information and decisions from the data.
So that we can trust it.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. A great topic. Data is not perfect is I need the t-shirt, for sure. All right. Number 3, got to keep moving, right? I love that we've got this great conversation. Could have been an episode, of course. We understand that.
It may be in the future.
Yes. Data storytelling is a journey best experienced with others. Okay?
Do tell.
So data storytelling, in a lot of cases, people think of it as a visualization at the end. They think of it as a presentation. I think of data storytelling as something that starts conversations. And so I think of it as something I do to create a journey. And so when I have projects, anything that's in the community level, I'm looking at, okay, I got to tell a story today. I got to get that out there so I can get people around the table that can actually help me go to where I want to go. Buy-in for me is through storytelling. And I take a lot of time and I'm painstakingly going through and creating those stories now, where I'm usually have an anecdotal story. I make it familiar for people. I then use data to scale it to something of a certain magnitude if I need to.
Step back a second. So when you say, because I think this is important from the beginning. So knowing your audience, so you're telling a story to your audience, but then trusting the data is what you're really trying to get your audience to do in this situation when you tell the story. So what do you mean? What do you mean by scale the conversation?
So if you think about, like, if I said Nashville is a food desert, right? There's no context there, right? It's hard to really think about that. Or if I said where that one person lives, they're experiencing, they're in a food desert. People will say, that's fine, but that's not me, right? Like my son, I said, do you think you have a fear that your job is going to go away? Every 18-year-old that's getting ready to get out into the world, or 22-year-old or whatever, they all think that the job that they're going to have, AI is not going to take. Everybody always thinks it's somebody else when you go anecdotal. So if you look at the data and say, you know what? I understand that maybe it's not you, but it is 70%. That's what scales it to make it more than just one individual. So when you tell when you tell an anecdotal story about a person, people will always just assume, well, yeah, but that's the outlier. You're just giving me the extreme. I'm like, no, that's actually the majority.
Okay.
And then it scales it to, oh, this is a problem.
So I would say that same thing in it. It forces empathy through a change in perspective.
Yes. Great. Yeah. No, I love that. And I think we're ready for a data storytelling 2.0 episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You showed me your materials on that. It's the content that you've created has like improved drastically.
Yeah. And, I started my data storytelling journey with Zach Gemignani, a good friend of ours. We brought him on episode 4-ish or 3, something like that.
I mean, it was about data storytelling.
It was data storytelling. I think it was episode 3. And we have continued to hone in and create this, just presented it. And now literally I have a playbook on how to do this. I have 4 different ways. Yeah. So we'll get into all of that. All right, I'll get into my last one because I'm probably already over time, but this is a fun topic. And but it's the word action. It really is. Number 4 is really about action. And here's what I mean. Data and storytelling. We keep talking about it all the time. It does not lead to action.
Yeah.
Stop it, folks. It doesn't. Your presentation did not change anybody's life. Your visualization did not change anybody's life.
That's a big statement. You don't know them.
But the conversations afterwards, or the conversations after you present it, are what lead to real action.
Yeah. So you're saying that we need to be aware of the fact that once we stop presenting or telling our data story, that's a mid-step. That's not the end of the data journey.
Yes. Data storytelling does not lead to the action. It helps. It leads to a conversation. That conversation leads to action. I always joke about this, but no good problem solving has ever happened without a coffee or a beer involved, right?
Sure.
In other words, sitting down and just saying, okay, let's get down to it.
So you're telling a story to build trust, empathy, and
provide insight.
Yeah, provide insight. But then your call to actions are after the data storytelling, or maybe at the end of the data story is when you announce the call to action. But then your pursuit of the call to action is after that presentation.
Yeah, and then you get into how many meetings have you been in where there's no next steps at the end?
I feel like you're in a unique position to experience that more because you're having more data conversations with lay people than I am. Most of the time that I have a conversation with a coworker, they're about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm with a lot of times 5 different groups where they are volunteering to do something.
Yeah.
So if you don't volunteer them, they're not going to step up and say, I'd love to add 40 hours to my month, So yes, I have to be very specific. I have to be that champion and go after things.
But you're also coordinating co-opportunity though.
Yes.
Like you're like you said, you're bringing multiple solution providers together.
Yeah.
For a mutual goal.
Because, and I should have even had this as one of the tenets, but it's actually maybe more about data. Data is a convener to me. It brings people together. It creates conversations. For example, if you have a 60-minute Zoom meeting with somebody and you're presenting, how much time do you present for?
About 45 minutes.
Yeah. And so a lot of people will go to the 58th minute because why? Because they think the audience is them, not the person on the other side, right? Because they're thinking they want to see every data point that they've ever created. And then it takes 58 minutes and they leave no time for discussion, which means there's no ability to think through it, comprehend it, digest it, and figure out what to do with that data.
Yeah.
I was in a meeting, and I'm not going to say where or what because it'll give things away, but we were presented all of this data. And it was like the 18th time we've been presented data with no actionable next steps. And finally somebody that was new just raised their hand and said, what's our strategy? Why are you giving me this data?
Did you clap?
Oh my, no, afterwards I had lunch. I was going to have lunch with this person anyways. And we just gushed about it. I'm like, thank you. And I told her some of my philosophies and they spent they actually went over going through all of the data points and just like we're going over now probably, but
we are.
That's okay. So anyways, that's why knowing your audience is so important, because if you're talking the whole time, you don't understand your audience.
I agree with
for
that.
sure. And if it can be in an email, put it in an email or create the one pager. If you are dying to give them 50 data points, put it in a one pager, make it an appendix, whatever, but stop talking.
If I'm with a group, like half my presentations are like, here's some information. I do 45 minutes straight. There's no expectation of like back and forth stuff.
Gotcha.
But if I'm in a sales presentation or something, I start off saying like, I have a deck that I'm going to be talking through at any point in time. Stop me, ask the questions. Let's have a conversation about stuff, because what I'm doing is I'm introducing a data point per slide, basically that helps solidify the story. And if any point in time they want to drill into that data, then I just use the data to go as deep as they want.
Yeah.
And then that establishes trust in a way that I know by the end of it that they understand exactly how we do things, and that more likely leads to the action of closing a deal.
All right. Yeah. And so those are my 4. So let me recap. Know your audience. You're not the audience in most cases, right? Data is not perfect. Data storytelling is a journey. Best experience with others. It's number 3. And then number 4, data and storytelling do not lead to the action, but conversations do. And just on that last one, I think it's important to mention, I actually have an entire curriculum basically on how to get to the next action. Who's doing the follow-up? I make it me. I don't rely on others. So I'm like, okay, so here's what I've gathered from today. Let me send that out to you with who's doing what. And then I've got it where you're doing this part, you're doing the research. Because, again, a lot of times I'm gathering people together to do things. And if I rely on that one person, it might be a month.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day. You're the glue.
Yes.
Well, you were calling me the glue for something else, but that's where you're the glue.
It's the glue. Yeah, you're exactly right. And people appreciate it. People like it when people kind of do that organizing. And then if you say, you're doing this, they do it.
Yeah, it's like if there's ever an accident, you don't say somebody call 911. No, you say you specifically call 911.
And then you go get this, and then people will act. And so, anyways, yeah, I know we went a little bit over on that one. I think we were definitely 20 minutes on that one, probably.
Yeah, it's way closer than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that one could have been 40. That could have been an hour and a half podcast episode. Yeah. So, all right, we got 3 done today. Our first one was AI that blows our mind. Charlie, you then did what the plugins that you use to save time.
Yeah,
excellent.
AI to save time.
AI to save time, and then the last one, 4 tenets of a data mindset, which we just finished up. So the idea we're probably going to slice and dice this one up into those 3 chunks. Put that out there, and hopefully we'll have this ability. And I'm saying this, I know the answer ish, but I think what we're looking to do is still have our podcast every 2 weeks, and put in on the off weeks a data 4.
Yep,
that is really cool. All right, I think we did it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it went better than I thought, because I thought our biggest problem was going to be the paring down. Yeah. If we're trying to make a video where we're talking about 4 topics and it only be 15 minutes, that's less than 5 minutes or less than 4 minutes per.
Yep.
And I don't know about you. I mean, I do know about you. We're both long-winded.
Absolutely.
So that's the most difficult part. But I feel like we did okay.
We did. All right. Well, I think we better call this one done. And so year 1 is done. Charlie, I got to ask you for final thoughts.
I have enjoyed myself, and I look forward to how the next year is going to go.
I think big things are going to happen for Data for All and beyond.
I'm rubbing my hands dubiously, but we're out there planning.
We were all in a year ago. We're all in twice more, and even then some. I'm excited. So we are going to end year 1 on that note. And thanks, everybody. Again, if you like what you're listening to, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player, and go visit our YouTube channel. A lot of the content that we talked about today is available there. And if you just go to dataforall.io, you can get all of that information. And so for the Data for All podcast, I'm Charlie Apigian.
And I'm Charlie Yielding.
And until next time.
That we really did better than I thought.
Yeah,